Hello everyone, this is Wrestling Watcher, YouTube channel. It's about watching professional wrestling. So I typically don't do this. I don't think I ever have. Maybe I have before. I'd have to go back into my library and really look. But Conrad Thompson went off on Roman Reigns here after that Summerslam main event. Said he was the most overrated main eventer in WWE history, I believe he said. Said his matches were somewhat the same and boring. Said he was Goldberg if he worked over 20 minutes, I believe is one of the things he said. Said that WWE spent years pushing him down our throats and he only really got over because of Paul Heyman. Yeah, he went off on a tangent. I might be missing some things, but he went off on him. And Eric Bischoff mostly just agreed, said that there's been no evolving of his character. And boy, Conrad went off on him. And I typically, said that he uses just a lot of the same moves, I think. I might have already mentioned that his matches were the same. So, I usually don't go here. I usually leave the podcast stuff alone, but, I think sometimes you just gotta talk about it. And boy, I guess first and foremost, calling him the most overrated main eventer in WWE history is really harsh because he's been proven to be box office. If you're a proven draw, if you're a proven main eventer that sells tickets, now look, someone in the comments could say, but SummerSlam wasn't sold out, or, SummerSlam didn't do as well, and hey, fair enough. But if you look at him consistently over the years, he's proven to be a massive box office draw for them. Now look, a lot of that credit does go to Paul Heyman. A lot of that credit does go to, Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, Solo. The Bloodline story isn't just Roman Reigns. It isn't a one-man story. It's an ensemble cast, right? I understand that. And so you can't give Roman all the credit. You gotta give him a lot of it. But, it's an ensemble cast. It's like a Netflix show with multiple characters working together for the storyline to work. But most overrated main eventer in WWE history, there have been worse main eventers than him. Problem is, none of them would be rated above him. So, most overrated. Look, he's on that short list of top WWE stars based off his booking and his positioning in the company. He's on that list with Hogan, Austin, Rock, Cena, the tippy top guys of the company. And if you want to go before that, you could put Bruno Sammartino, Bob Backlund on there, but that's the territorial days. That's not, when Vince bought the company back in 82, I believe it was, 82 or 83, I think it was 82, and then began the expansion shortly thereafter. Right? The other guys I mentioned, Sammartino and Backlund, were before that. So a lot of people don't put them on the list. I would. I think it's fair, but getting a little bit off topic here. Most overrated main eventer in history, that's... the box office, I don't think, would suggest that. Now, look, if we look at the moveset, the same match over and over, predictable matches, I think that could be a little bit harsh. I think it really depends on his opponent. Look, a lot of his matches carry the same formula, right? Maybe he starts off strong, somewhat dominant, then he makes a mistake. There's some hope spots. The babyface gets some good moves in. You think maybe Roman could be defeated. Then somehow he takes over. Maybe there's outside interference back when he was a full-fledged heel. Or he just eventually takes over and gets the win. Can his match formula be predictable? I think a lot of main eventers can, so it's a bit of a harsh critique. You knew what you were getting in the 80s and early mid-90s with Hogan. He'd start off relatively strong. The heel would take control, beat him up for, a good 7, 8, 9 minutes. Hulks up, points the finger, couple punches, big boot, leg drop, 1, 2, 3. Room service, brother. And look, a lot of fans may look at that and sort of roll their eyes now, but it worked. It worked. It was box office. If it sells tickets, you can't say it's bad. If a movie does well, it does well. If a TV show does well, it does well. If a pro wrestler draws money, they draw money. Roman Reigns has proven to draw money. And so, most overrated main eventer in history, WWE history, I think he specifically said, if you're comparing him to the tippy-top guys, Mount Rushmore draw guys, the Hogans, the Rocks, Austin, Cena's, if you're comparing him to them, you might have a point. It's a difficult argument to make. If you throw in the argument that he's been pushed down our throats, that argument might land. I think a lot of these podcasters are really sensationalist. It's like you listen to a Vince Russo podcast or something, it's like the worst creative in WWE history, and the worst money making, all this worst in history stuff. As a wrestling fan, it's kind of like worst anything WWE history. I'm going to say the year 1995, generally speaking, and I would challenge anyone listening to really challenge me on that. Worst creative, I'd go 95. Worst booking, which is basically the same thing, is 95. But I would have to really I would push back against Conrad somewhat on that, because, and even Eric, because when you're saying, his character hasn't evolved, well, what's it meant to evolve to? His character wants to control and have as much power as he can over the company, using his family to do it. That's his character. And I think it has evolved. If you really think about it. Think about 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, that original bloodline run. The character of Roman Reigns is all about manipulating and using his family for his own ends under the guise of wanting to elevate his family. Even if he did want to elevate his family, his character's power was always the most important part. I would argue his character has evolved to this more babyface role of actually loving and caring about his family. Does he want to use them for his own power? Yes, but he treats them somewhat better now. That is, by definition, character evolution. The character didn't suddenly stop being a power-hungry psychopath. The evolution comes in just how he treats his family better. That's the babyface aspect of it. And so, you kind of look at that and go, there is some evolution there. Now, as far as Conrad's claims, look, part-time thing, I think he said, why does Roman get a pass, but Brock Lesnar doesn't? Because Brock Lesnar was always part-time. Here's the problem with that argument. From the very moment Brock Lesnar came back in 2012, the night after WrestleMania 28, that Rock Cena show. Yes, it's been that long. Brock Lesnar was technically speaking part-time. But he was never full-time the whole time, right? Maybe he'd stop and do a big house show here or there. Maybe there was times when he was on TV more times than others. But by definition, he was always considered part-time. He wasn't wrestling on a week-to-week basis on Raws or SmackDown. Roman, at least you can say, was full-time for a long time before becoming part-time. I think he became part-time in 2022, late 2022, when he stopped doing the house shows regularly. If anything, that's why Roman would get a pass. He was full-time for a long time. Brock wasn't. That's why Brock doesn't get the pass. That would be my answer to that. But boy, Conrad Thompson went off on Roman. Which I think, if you're doing these podcasts, is a great move. Get you more clicks, get you more notice. I mean, none of these podcasters are generally going to say that was great or that was awesome. You might get some of that, but not often. You got to be contrarian, I think. But boy, interesting stuff, guys.